Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. I'm stepping into the role of your CMA coach, and we're going to tackle what I like to call the special ops of cost accounting. You know, those unique, highly specialized systems that standard methods just completely fail at handling. Standard costing is fantastic for everyday run-of-the-mill operations. But what happens when a manufacturing process gets weird or incredibly fast? That's exactly where these specialized systems come to the rescue. Now, you've likely already nailed the heavy hitters, right? Things like job order and process costing. And hey, you should be really proud of that. But we've got to get real for a second. Are you actually ready for the ICMA examiner's curveballs? Because let me tell you, they love to test your agility here. They want to see if you panic when a company doesn't fit neatly into a traditional box. So they're going to throw these alternate scenarios at you just to make sure you truly understand the core mechanics of how costs flow. Okay, here's our game plan for today's strategy session. We're going to decode 3 specific systems: operation costing, backflush costing, and joint costing. And then we'll wrap the whole thing up with a rock-solid exam action plan. All right, kicking things off with system number 1, operation costing, which is our hybrid system. You can think of this as, well, actually, just think of it literally as the baby of job order and process costing. It's a true hybrid. We use this when products come in totally different models or batches, but they pass through the exact same continuous operations. So your direct materials, those are tracked specifically to a unique batch, just like job order. But your conversion costs, meaning your direct labor and manufacturing overhead, those are completely standardized and pooled by the operation itself, exactly like process costing. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine a massive clothing factory making batches of wool, cotton, and silk shirts. Now, the materials for those wool, cotton, and silk shirts are obviously unique to each batch, right? I mean, you wouldn't cost a yard of premium silk the same way you'd cost basic cotton. But the actual cutting and sewing machines that go through, exactly the same. The labor and the overhead to run a shirt through a sewing machine simply does not change just because the fabric changed. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway for test day. When you're sitting in that testing center and a question pops up about an assembly line using totally different raw materials but identical processing steps, your answer is operation costing, every time. Just remember the golden rule. Track your materials by the batch and pull your conversion costs by the operation. Lock that mental model in and you're going to nail any operation costing question they throw your way. Moving right along to system number 2, backflush costing. This one is all about extreme lean efficiency. Traditional costing is kind of like a micromanager. It logs every single step sequentially. You make a journal entry when materials arrive, you make another when they hit work in process, another for finished goods, and yet another for cost of goods sold. It is obsessed with tracking inventory at every possible stage. Backflush costing, on the other hand, is built for high-efficiency, zero-inventory environments. It completely strips out all that tedious, detailed tracking just to save on administrative cost. Picture a super fast just-in-time or JIT environment. Raw materials hit the loading dock, they spend maybe 2 hours in assembly, and boom, they are shipped out as cost of goods sold that exact same afternoon. Tracking work in process here, it's a massive waste of time. The product moves so incredibly fast that by the time you'd even log the journal entry, the thing is already halfway to the customer on a delivery truck. So the costs essentially just skip those messy middle steps. Because of that warp speed, backflush costing actually delays the journal entries until the very end of the production cycle. It just waits. It waits until units are either totally finished or actually sold, and then it works backward. It uses standard costs to literally flush the costs backward out of the system. It's a wildly conceptual way of doing things, but man, it is incredibly powerful for eliminating administrative clutter. Okay, big red flashing light here for the exam. Please lock this in, because backflush costing sweeps right over those detailed, real-time inventory balances. It does not strictly comply with generally accepted accounting principles. It's not GAAP compliant. It is strictly an internal cost-saving efficiency tool for management. If the exam asks you to identify its main disadvantage, GAAP noncompliance is absolutely the #1 answer you need to be hunting for. All right, on to our third and final system, joint costing, focusing specifically on byproducts and the split-off point. This entire system kicks in when nature or chemistry takes a single raw material and naturally splits it into multiple different products simultaneously. The absolute core concept you have to master here is the split-off point. By definition, this is the exact moment in production where joint products become distinct, individual items. Think of a massive oil refinery. You pump crude oil into the facility, and out comes gasoline, heating oil, and chemical compounds. That precise moment the crude oil separates, that is the all-important split-off point. And any cost incurred before that split is your joint cost.
Now, the examiners are going to test you on how you actually allocate those joint costs. You have a couple of options. First, the physical measure method. This allocates costs based on physical traits like weight or volume. It's super simple, but honestly, it's kind of flawed because it totally ignores economic value, meaning cheap asphalt could end up absorbing the same exact cost as premium jet fuel. On the flip side, we have market-based methods. These are much smarter because they allocate costs based on the relative sales value of the products right at that split-off point.
To put that into perspective, say gasoline makes up 70% of the total market sales value at the split-off point, and heating oil makes up the other 30%. The allocation becomes a breeze. Gasoline instantly absorbs 70% of those total joint costs, and heating oil takes the remaining 30%. See how nice that is? It ties the cost burden directly to the product's actual ability to generate revenue for the company. Listen closely to this next part, because this is exactly where so many candidates drop easy points. When you are deciding whether to sell a product immediately at split-off or process it further to sell it for a higher price later, do not fall for the trap. Joint costs are completely irrelevant sunk costs. They are gone. You've already spent that money just to get to the split-off point regardless of what you decide to do next. You must only compare the incremental revenue you'd get against the separable costs of that further processing. That's it.
Okay, deep breath. We've covered a lot of ground. Let's head into our final section, the summary and exam plan.
Let's do a lightning-fast recap to really cement this strategy. Remember your 3 big takeaways. Operation costing is your hybrid system, perfect for unique materials running through identical processing. Backflush costing is your lean, mean JIT machine that flushes costs backwards to save time. And joint costing, that is all about navigating the split-off point and aggressively ignoring sunk costs. Look, these specialized systems, these curveballs, they might not pop up quite as often as standard costing on the exam, but honestly, if you know the definitions and the decision rules we just outlined, they're incredibly easy, highly predictable points on part 1. The questions really don't vary all that much. Once you see the pattern, you absolutely own the point. So, I'm leaving you with a challenge before we wrap up today. Can you spot the split-off point in your very next practice question? I want you to go tackle a few conceptual multiple-choice questions right now while this is all completely fresh in your mind. You've got this. Keep your head up, stay totally focused, and I will see you in our next CMA Strategy Explainer.